Hello, everybody. This is Anthony for Investors Underground. Today, I have an opportunity to speak with one of the outstanding members of the Investors Underground community. It's my pleasure to introduce Anna Wang. Anna began trading with an initial investment of $1,000. When she checked her trading account again, that amount had grown nearly tenfold. She continued to swing trade until her account was over $25,000. Once she was over the pattern day trader amount, she was able to expand her trading strategy. She continues to find success as a trader today. Hello, Anna. Thank you for being here and taking the time to speak with me today.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Anna, there's a lot that I want to talk about, but maybe I can just start by asking, how did you first get interested in the stock market and trading?
The earliest memory that I have is actually from when I was I think I was in fifth grade. And my dad used to do a little bit of trading on the stock market for fun. And I would like watch him. And I remember I had a laptop at that time and there was like, I don't know what the program was called, but I downloaded some early like day trading platform with like delayed data feeds on my laptop. And I was like, I'm going to be a day trader someday, even though I had no idea what I was looking at or what I was doing. But the idea just seemed really interesting to me at the time, even though I never really fully understood it back then, I think. So that was kind of my first exposure to it. But it wasn't until like many years later that I ever actually tried it for myself. So
You had some interest in trading, sort of had a concept of what it was, even from an early age.
yeah, I honestly I can't remember what about it even appealed to me back then. I think I just thought it looked cool or something. I really don't even know. But like years later when I was like 18 and a waitress and all my savings were in a piggy bank in my closet, like a literal piggy bank, but it was a tortoise instead of a pig. And one day I was just like, I should invest this money instead of just having it sit in this piggy bank. So that's kind of how it started. So I think I had like $1,000, like 1,000 or $1,500, something like that, saved up. And I opened an E-Trade account and I didn't know what I was doing at all. But I just remembered people saying, like, buy stock in the companies that you like. And so I bought with however much I could afford of like Google, Amazon, and Berkshire Hathaway were the three. And then I just promptly forgot about it for many years.
That was your initial strategy,
Yeah.
if you
That was
will.
like my first stocks I ever bought. And that was probably like in 2009, I would say maybe. Um, and yeah, I just totally forgot about it after that, because it was just kind of like investing, set it and forget it and never look at it again. And it wasn't until years later, like probably like 7 or 8 years later, that I think it was during tax season, you're getting all of your tax forms. And I got this E-Trade form and I was like, E-Trade, what's in there? And then it kind of brought me back to when I first purchased those like 4 shares of stock or whatever it was back then. And I opened up the account and the investment had gone to like $8,000 or $9,000, like close to 10K. And it was like, whoa, that's wild, because that was like a really big return from the 1,000 or 1,500, whatever it was that I started with. So that kind of reignited my interest in the stock market that had been dormant since fifth grade or whatever.
Yeah. And was there any temptation to simply take the money out and go on a spending spree, or were you thinking longer term? Maybe you could turn this 10,000 into something more.
Oh, no, I definitely was like, if I can turn $1,000 into $10,000, I can turn $10,000 into $100,000. Like that's where my mindset was. And my parents were always very like really instilled like financial responsibility into me growing up, like never go into debt. Don't like put everything on your credit card unless you're paying it off at the end of every month, stuff like that. So I did kind of have like a decent foundation as far as understanding like how you could potentially make your money work for you. I just had never had any personal experience doing so.
So, if at the start of your initial investment you were setting it and forgetting it, what was your strategy going from $10,000 to $25,000? Was it effectively the same strategy?
No, so I mean, so like once I took that money out, I was like, I'm gonna learn how to trade. Yeah. And the funny thing is like I know that I guess I don't know everything that my dad traded. I know a lot of it was like based on stocks with like good earnings and valuations, but he also liked to trade penny stocks. And with my $10,000, like I was like, well, what can I trade? I'm like, well, I'm going to trade these penny stocks. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was like, I can buy so many shares of these penny stocks and I'm going to start from there. So I started trading these penny stocks and just swing trading them. And I built like the bulk of my account even like beyond after I got past PDT. Like my first like big exponential like level up was built basically off of just one setup that I called it um like the small cap catalyst swing, or like a micro cap catalyst swing, I guess it technically would be. And so basically I would go on like Finviz or whatever scanner, and I would filter for stocks that were under like 500 million market cap or so. And I would want something with a float of like less than 20 million, um, but not too low. Like you kind of want it between like 10 and 20 million. And then I would filter them by price too, to be like under $3 for $3 or $4. And, then you get this list of 100 tickers or whatever it is. And then I would filter for um, I would just look at all of the charts and look for charts that looked like they were building a really nice base, because a really big criteria was that you got an absolute bottom entry so that you could maximize your risk reward. So I'd be looking for, I think when I look back on my stats, when I was tracking them, my average risk reward that I was getting was 1 to 7. So for every like 10 cents I was risking, on average, I was making 70 cents. So it was a really solid risk reward ratio. So once I found those, I would make a list of these tickers that just technically looked like they were bottoming. And sometimes I would add in a filter of like the like relative volume being greater than 1, just to see like is the volume starting to come in? And then sometimes, that would be an additional filter. So then I would take that list of stocks, maybe by then you'd have like 10 or 15 after all is said and done. And I would go onto their websites and I would read all their PRs, and a lot of these would be biotechs early on. Like I really like to swing trade biotechs. And I would just look at their pipeline, look at their previous PRs, and look for any upcoming catalyst that would be newsworthy, not like a patent or anything, but like a big catalyst. And once I had the list of catalysts, like tickers that were technically set up for like a bottom entry for a swing that also had a catalyst, then I would look into their SEC filings to look for. And I know a lot of people consider, for example, having an S3 as something bearish because they're going to do an offering. But for me, because I was kind of like front running the move, I actually saw it as a bullish sign, because I would say, okay, this company has a shelf offering. They want to raise money. They're gonna pump the price before they raise the money. So I would look to see, like, do they have an active shelf, or have they recently filed? And if they've recently filed, is that likely to become active before this catalyst? So the whole idea is, all right, now I'm going to enter at this bottomed out entry level where my risk is tiny, you know, where I'm risking maybe like 10 cents for $3 potentially. And then I'm just going to load up on that. I'm going to keep my hard stop below and wait for that catalyst to hit and then sell on the morning gap up. And that's, in a nutshell, kind of like the strategy that built my initial account. So I know like a lot of momentum traders will scan in the morning for those gap ups, right? You're looking for these momentum trades that have gapped up 50, 100%. And for me, like I'm already selling by the time these momentum traders are looking at where are they going to enter on the pullback or where are they going to short it. I've like already sold on that pre-market gap up. And that just always worked better for me because I suck at momentum trading. So long story long, that was really how I did it.
Yeah. That's fascinating on a number of levels. First, I think that comes to mind for me is that you were selling at the same time some of the momentum short sellers were looking to sell and get short. So it's not like you were necessarily in disagreement with them. You were just, in the move a lot sooner.
That's true. But also too, I've seen tickers where like I sell into the morning gap and I'm up maybe like 100%, but then the market opens and the thing runs like another 300%, right? And I'm just completely out of it. And that's always painful when that happens, but I just can't really stomach moves like that unless I'm in from a bottom entry, and that like volatility sometimes is just too much for me. I feel like every trader has a different speed that they operate best at. And I would say mine is like medium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other thing that strikes me is that you are researching the companies at both a technical level and a fundamental level. Is that something that you continue to do as the years went on and you grew as a trader?
No, I would say, early on, I would say now I'm much better at technical analysis than I was back then. And I'm about as good as fundamental analysis still. I just don't like it. And that's definitely probably one of my weak points. I love to surround myself with traders that are great at fundamental analysis because then we can kind of complement each other. But every time I look at an earnings report, I just want to die because of boredom. So I would say like today, if I'm swinging something, so like one swing I have on right now is PCT. It's my only swing. And I do have a fundamental thesis behind that. And it's kind of the same where I like researched the company, read their prior earnings reports, read like what kind of upcoming catalysts they have, got a bottom entry. Very much the same as like my old school type of swing that I would take. But for the most part, I would say the majority of my trades these days are purely technical.
Are you still swing trading a lot of your trades, or are you
Not really.
okay?
Not really. I
When did that change?
like March 2021.
Mm, mm,
So for a long time, like swing trading just worked so well, right? We were in this like pretty stable bull market um and it worked great with my schedule because I work a full-time job and I just really liked being able to give trades time to work. But I had like my biggest loss ever to date the night the 10-year spiked in 2021. It was like late February or early March. I can't remember exactly the date, but it really affected me. And I think I got really lucky when I started trading that the market was so friendly. And like, I really feel like I hadn't, to be honest with you, like the first few years I was trading, I feel like I really didn't encounter very many hardships, if any. You know, it was such a buy the dip market for such a long time. And so the night that the 10-year spiked, I was like fully positioned in all of these micro cap biotech stocks and like low float runners that I was swinging. And I had I was up, I remember 100, 150% on almost every single position. And so to me, like looking at these, I'm like, technically, I have no reason to take them off. And overnight, the 10-year spiked. And then I woke up the next morning, like the entire market had gapped down, but these risk on stocks, like small cap shitters, had gapped down extra, right? So I go from being up 100 to 150% to down 50% for my entry overnight. And yeah, like in my main account, that was like 70K loss. And then in another account, it was like another 30K. And that's like how much I was making in a year at the time at my day job. And that just really shook me up because I think for the first time I was like, holy shit, you know? I mean, I remember like laying in the bathtub crying, like drinking wine in my bathtub. Like my husband and I started referring to the bathtub as the crying tub because I had a couple of weeks there where all I wanted to do was drink wine and cry in my bathtub because I was like, how could I have let this happen? How, like, do I even know what I'm doing? Like, maybe I have no idea what I'm doing at all, you know? And it really made me doubt myself. And like in hindsight, I think it was it was a blessing in disguise that I learned that lesson still relatively early, right? Because it could have been, if it had been later in my trading career, it could have been like a $500,000 loss or $1 million loss or something. So I'm like, at least I learned it at a time where I could afford to absorb that loss because luckily, like again, like just luck, I think had a lot to do with everything too. Like that January, I had my biggest month ever, which was like 125K month. And so even though I had taken this 6-figure loss, it really just kind of like brought me back to like the starting point. It didn't feel like that, of course. Like the way it felt was like the world is ending. But when I take a step back and look at the overall circumstances, I'm like, I got really lucky as far as like when that happened in my trading journey. But that really opened my eyes to the risks behind trading some of these like low float biotechs that I had been trading, right? And it really made me rethink like, what do I need to do to minimize the chance of something like that happening to me again? So it kind of prompted me to reevaluate how I was trading and explore new strategies, you know, because around that same time after that, small caps really died for a while where there really weren't any runners or any gap up would be sold off immediately. And so the setup stopped working anyway. So that's when I started moving towards trading large caps more, and also moving towards day trading more because I just got to this point where I was like, I don't want to have to go to sleep and worry about like, is some black swan event going to happen overnight and gap everything down and kill me? So now I'm like, my primary account is just all cash by the end of the day, and I'll take one or two swings here or there if I have a lot of conviction in it and I think I've gotten a really, really safe entry. But other than that, I'm really happy to just day trade and just be all cash at the end of the day and sleep like a baby at night.
Right. Absolutely. I would imagine that type of market volatility and swing from being up in a position or several positions to waking up and being down would shake most people and most traders. And so you were able to eventually, it sounds like, break through and get over that adversity. And if it's okay with you, I'd love to dig in a little bit into that process of having to sort through what went wrong and change maybe some rules and
Yeah.
strategy. It sounds like. Can you talk a little bit about how you were able to bounce back and what sort of rules you put in place, and maybe some strategy changes that you implemented?
Sure. Well, it didn't happen right away. It was probably like several months before I really, like I said, this happened like end of February, early March of that year. And it wasn't until like that fall, I think, that I started feeling confident again because I was just so shaken by it that it got to this point where even when I saw a good setup, I would be afraid to trust myself and afraid to take it. And then even if I took the trade, I would take the profit way too early, or I would cut it before where the actual stop should be, and it just kind of took some time to actually. I started going to therapy after that too, because it made me realize like the way that I was beating myself up for it kind of made me realize that I was holding on to some like unhealthy beliefs about money and about like my self-worth and what kinds of success I needed to have to like be a worthy human, and so yeah, I actually ended up going to therapy for a bunch of stuff and kind of just working on my mindset overall and then I guess just over time the confidence just started building like little by little by little back, but I had to size down a lot from the kind of size that I was taking to give myself the confidence to be able to hold like either to my stop or to my target price. Because like I mentioned earlier, like what I ended up doing was just taking the winners off way too soon and cutting the like losers, like not giving the trades enough room to work. So I would like cut something as soon as it started going against me, and then it would make the entire move that I was waiting for without me, and then I would just watch it go without me, and all of that would compound onto like this weight that I was already holding mentally. And so yeah, I just really had to size down, and that was one of my rules was whatever your original stop is, like that's your stop, and you're not going to take it off until it breaks your actual stop, and you're only going to move your stop once you're at your first price target, to try to help myself actually give these trades room to work, because for whatever reason, my ability to do that just went out the window after that big drawdown. So I really had to relearn that.
I think that's admirable. That type of volatility swing and taking a hit to your trading account, again, I think would shock a lot of traders. So I applaud you for working through that and overcoming that adversity. And I think it also speaks to the importance of working on ourselves as traders. I think it takes a certain amount of um, sophistication and maturity to look inward and make some of those changes. And so, if it's okay with you, I'd love to talk a little bit about the importance of psychology, emotional intelligence, and mental health in trading. Could you talk a little bit about the importance of those factors for you and growing as a trader?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's paramount to being a successful trader. I honestly feel like if you have a bunch of crap that you haven't worked through, you're only ever going to get so good at trading, and then you're going to hit a ceiling, because you're only going to be as great as your mindset will allow you to be. And I think for me, in my personal experience, so in my personal experience, like when I experienced that drawdown, there was some other stuff going on as well, where like I had kept trading a secret for a long time and I didn't tell anybody really. And um and like I told my parents that I was trading, and without getting too much into it, there was telling them basically like put a ton of pressure on me suddenly, where before I was just trading for myself and like dealing with my losses by myself and my wins by myself. Like suddenly I had my parents all the time being like, what's your trading account at today? Like, are you winning? Are you losing? How much are you making? Show me your account balance. Like, trade my account. What are you buying? What are you selling? Oh, you bought that too early. You sold that too early. And suddenly there were all these like external voices kind of adding to the pressure. And what that ended up doing was kind of like just like triggering a lot of beliefs about like self-worth and money and success, and like dumping those beliefs into my trading, which ended up negatively affecting my trading because like upon further review, like, and I think this is common for a lot of Asian households, right? You hear the concept of like a tiger mom and stuff. Like I had the type of parents where if I came home with a 98 on a test, they'd be like, where's the other 2 points? You know? And so it kind of like compounded the pressure. And it was like a lot of it was even just like pressure that I was putting on myself from like hearing their voices in my head. It wasn't even necessarily them saying it to me. It was like little kid Anna hearing my parents say like, well, where's the extra 2 points? Why didn't you get 100%? And and being in therapy like made me realize I had all these beliefs around like, you know, I wasn't allowed to make mistakes. And if I make a mistake, then I'm not a worthy person. I'm not successful. I'm not worthy of being successful. And even though I was an adult and independent, I was still kind of like copy pasting these beliefs onto myself so that when I dealt with something like a big drawdown or like had a bad day, broke a couple of trading rules, I'd really self-flagellate and beat myself up. And that would put me in an even worse mental space to trade the next day and the next day, and it would just spiral. So I actually like my husband got me this mug. It says, I attract health and wealth with ease because mindset, I really think, is everything. And having it put me in this place where my mindset was like, I'm not good enough. I don't deserve this. I'm not successful. Like, I can't do it. And as long as I just had this realization that as long as I was in that mindset, that's what was going to happen. And so I had to do a lot of work to get to the point where I had a healthier mindset of, if you can do it once, you can do it again. If you have the skills, like you can keep building on them, and just really change that self-talk. And I think it's important to kind of reflect, like if you're struggling, if you feel like you're up against a wall, or if you feel like you're self-sabotaging yourself during trades, because I had this period where I was really self-sabotaging my own trades. So that was like the next phase where I would say, to a friend, hey, like NVIDIA looks like it's going to 300 and it's only a $2 risk for a $25 gain. It really like highly convicted enough that like my friends would take the trade and be like, this is awesome. Like that was a huge win. And guess who didn't take the trade? I didn't take the trade. Or I would take the trade and cut it at like plus 25 cents or minus 25 cents because I just didn't believe in myself, or even if I believed in myself, I didn't think I deserved it. And so I would just like sabotage it. Or, for example, like something that I remember doing is I would take a trade and say, like, this is my stop, this is my price target. And I would take the trade, it would hit my price target, start rejecting, and I would just sit there and stare at it and be like, now it's going to reject and come all the way back down. And I would just let it come all the way back down. And then I'd be like, now it's going to break below my entry and it's going to hit my stop. And then I would cancel my stop, hard stop, and I would just let it go red. And, then at the end of the day, I'd be like, why did I do that? Why did I do that to myself? And it came down to the self-flagellation where I was just beating myself up and being frustrated for like past mistakes I had made, or for just this inner feeling of like, you don't deserve this, you're not good enough. And it was once I pinpointed that kind of like negative self-talk, those kind of limiting beliefs, that I think I was really able to start climbing out of that and get back to being more like the trader that I was before, if that makes sense. So I do think that mental health is really, really important, whether it's through therapy or through something else, or just self-reflection on like, what are the messages that I was told about money when I was younger? Like, is it that only bad people get rich? Or is it that, like whatever it may be, if you have any kind of like belief that you have been taught or that you'd heard growing up, like that will affect the way that you trade now. So I think it's always worthwhile to kind of just go back, figure out like, do you have any of these beliefs? What are these beliefs? And are they helping you or are they harming you? Because some people have really amazing beliefs that elevate their trading, that elevate their performance, like if you put your mind to it, you can do anything. And then there's people that grew up with beliefs like the only way you'll ever make money is if you become a doctor. Everything else is a waste of time, stuff like that. It's just kind of figuring out like what baseline are you starting from? And I think if you do have any of those beliefs that are hindering you, working to clear those, I think really helps as far as taking your trading to the next level. At least I feel like it really helped for me, because I found that the day I woke up and was like, you know what, all of that is bullshit. Like, I know I'm a good trader and I'm going to be a great trader and I'm only going to keep getting better. Like, the day that became my actual mindset was the day that suddenly my PNL like started going like this again, instead of just kind of like waffling at this flat going nowhere level.
I absolutely appreciate hearing about this. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think a lot of traders, whether they realize it or not, do have these set of limiting beliefs, and they certainly have beliefs. Everybody has beliefs. It's just a matter of whether or not one has taken the time to sit down and understand who they are as a trader. And you certainly did that. And so, absolutely applaud that. I think it's something a lot of traders probably should sit down and do. Um, One of my questions for you, Anna, is how long did that process take from when you faced your drawdown to when you started to feel confident again in your trading and began to, sort of tune out those self saboteurs?
Yeah, I would say it's constantly a work in progress. I think it's still a work in progress. I think it'll forever be a work in progress. But I would say that it was probably fall of 2021. So a solid 6 months where like I was having red months or flat months and just feeling like trash, and that was like around the time I went to therapy. And yeah, I would say it was like I started climbing out of the hole probably that fall. And it was just like little tiny baby steps. And then, in 2022, I think things really started turning around even more, like at a faster pace. But it definitely wasn't overnight, and it is still something that I'm very mindful about every day. Like, I'm very careful about the language that I use to talk about myself. And so one example is like, I think, like, if you tell yourself like, oh, I'm not disciplined, I can't take my stops, you're just reinforcing that. You're giving yourself permission to be that. You're accepting that as your identity. But for example, if you think that like not taking your stop is a weakness of yours, or that like not being disciplined, not following your rules, I think a better message to say to yourself is, I always take my stops because I am disciplined. I have rules and I follow them. Because when you say that, then instead what you're telling yourself and what you're embodying is this disciplined person. And that will actually make you more likely to follow through with those rules and follow through with taking your stop or taking your profit when you should, versus giving yourself an out by saying, I'm just not a disciplined trader. I'm just bad at taking stops. So I would say that's something that helped me a lot too, is just being cognizant of how I'm speaking about myself to myself.
And Anna, for traders who might be experiencing a similar sort of sentiment of doubt about themselves, or are facing a similar type of adversity in their trading, what advice would you give them?
I honestly think that everyone can benefit from therapy. I know it's not for everyone. And I know, like, in trading, a lot of traders are men, and men tend to be less open to therapy. But I would say that if you feel like you are struggling with something that's internal, don't rule it out. Like, don't knock it until you've tried it, because you might be able to like pinpoint like something that just identifying it might help you get better at trading, or be more disciplined, or be whatever you need. I also think um, giving yourself permission to make mistakes. So something for me that I realized um, that really affected me was, if I made a mistake, I would beat myself up and self-flagellate so much that it would cause me to self-sabotage the next day and the next day. And instead, once I switched to saying to myself, it's okay to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. And even though I made a mistake today, I am still worthy of being successful. I still have the capability of being successful. And I'm going to learn from this mistake, and I'm going to grow from it, instead of having that like negative talk about screwing up, like, or sometimes I'll say to myself, like, even if I am worthy of being loved and being successful, even though I made a mistake. And even that honestly had a big impact on me, because I think there was some part of me personally, this might not be true for everybody, but for me personally, I grew up very much feeling like if I didn't get the 100 on the test, I wasn't lovable, um, or I wasn't successful. And I really had to start actively counteracting those messages that my own mind was telling me. So I would say, like, take notes on, like, what are you telling yourself when you're struggling? What are you telling yourself when you take a loss? Like, what is that self-talk saying? And is it something that's helping you or harming you? And if it's something that's harming you, then figure out what you're going to say instead when you catch yourself saying that thing that's harming you, and stop yourself and say that new statement that you're going to say instead, to eliminate that negative self-talk.
One of my questions was about maybe the mistakes or beliefs that traders might have that prevent them or limit them from becoming successful, are there any things you think that traders sort of prioritize or limiting, or rather overconfidence type of beliefs that hinder some traders?
Especially with new traders. I think, there's that saying that people really underestimate how much they can do in 5 years, and they really overestimate how much they can do in 1 year. And I think that that is a pitfall for a lot of new traders. I think that they want to run before they've learned how to walk. And I've seen like even a friend of mine who started trading in, I think, like late 2019. I actually traded with him through a lot of 2019 and 2020. And I watched him build his account from 25K to 500K. And then I watched him blow it up, like blow up the whole thing. And throughout the whole way down, I was like screaming, like, please, like, don't do this, you're gonna blow it, you're gonna blow your account. And what would happen was he would take a big loss, and then he would try to revenge trade that, and then like take even bigger risk on the next trade and even bigger risk on the next trade to try to make it all back in one trade. And literally in like 3 trades, he blew his entire account. And it was like, it was so heartbreaking. Like he texted me, like there was a time where I was really worried about him because he was like, I just want to jump into the Pacific Ocean. Like, I don't want to live anymore. And it's like, that's really serious, like really serious effects it can have on your mental health. And I think it just comes from like wanting too much too quickly. And if you can just slow down and take it step by step, those gains are going to compound so fast when you're consistent. Like consistency is more important above all else, because it doesn't matter if you can make $1 million if you lose the $1 million the next day all at once. But if you can consistently make like even if you're making like $250 a day, that's what, like $5,000 a month. And then if you can gradually up that, gradually up your position sizing a little bit by little, and gradually like scooch up your risk, and that compounds so quickly. So I would just say, just remember, like, you will tend to overestimate how much you can do in a year and underestimate how much you can do in 5 years. So instead of giving yourself this 1 year goal, like give yourself a 5 year goal and give yourself that breathing room. And I think that will go a long way.
Thank you. I think that's a great point. This importance of maybe getting rich slowly and giving yourself time to stay in the game of trading.
Yeah, exactly. Because once you blow your account, maybe that's that. Like my friend, he was like, that was all of my money.
Wow.
I can't afford to refund my account. And so that was kind of it for him. So like get rich slowly, get rich once, and then keep it, right? Instead of having this up and down, up and down. Yeah.
One of the questions that I had for you, Anna, was about this maybe notion that one needs to be a full time trader in order to be a successful trader. Can you talk a little bit about whether or not you believe that, and whether there might be maybe some benefits to having, whether it's a job or a career, but some sort of income outside of trading?
Yeah. So I think personally that you absolutely don't have to be a full-time trader to be a successful trader. I'm not a full-time trader. I have a full-time job, and I just trade when I can. I trade what I can, and it works better for me. And to be honest with you, I I seriously considered going full-time, and I was on track to do it by like May of 2021. But we all know what happened in March of 2021. I had that big drawdown, right? And it really woke me up. Like it made me think, okay, to me, I was like, all right, I'm going to pull like 250K out of my trading account after taxes and everything and still have of enough capital to trade comfortably. And that will make me feel comfortable enough to be a full-time trader. That's like kind of what I thought. But when I lost like 6 figures in one night, I was like, okay, actually, I could lose how much I make in 1 year in one night, like how much I make at my day job in 1 year in one night back then. And it just completely flipped the idea on my head of like, do I really want that? Like, do I want the pressure of knowing that? Right. And I wasn't in a good headspace. It took me months to get back on track after that psychologically. And I had never been so grateful to have a full-time job because I'm like, you know what? Even if I had blown my entire account, which knock on wood, let's never let that happen. It wouldn't have mattered because pretty much 100% of all the money I have in the market is from the market. It's all profits. Like if I lost everything, it would have zero impact on my day-to-day life. It would have zero impact on my retirement, on any of that stuff, because everything in the market is from the market and I don't have to rely on it to pay the bills. And that actually makes me a better trader, because what I realized after that drawdown is like, that made me start thinking, because I was still thinking like, oh, but I still want to start trading full time. And if I want to start trading full time by May, then I have to make X number of dollars and I have to make this much back to have this much padding. And that additional level of pressure made me a worse trader because it caused me to overtrade or like force trades that weren't there, because I'd be like, I'm not at my profit goal for the day. And that would end up hurting me. And so, yeah, eventually I just realized when I don't need the money, that's when I'm the best at trading, because it's not about how much money you're making. It's about whether or not you're making the right decisions. And I know that's probably not the case for everybody, but for me personally, that's how my mind works. So I really doubt I would ever go full time personally for me.
And I think that's important because you understand what works best for you, and that doesn't have to apply to anybody else. The amazing part is that it works for you, you figure that out, and you're still able to be a successful trader, and you have additional income coming in. So that's a double win.
Mhm. Yeah.
Another one of the questions that I had for you, Anna, was about Investors Underground. So, how did you first hear about or discover Investors Underground?
Sure. So I travel a lot for work, and I try to make my like driving time, my flying time, whatever it is, as productive as I can. So I love, like, one thing I love is listening to podcasts when I'm driving. And there's a podcast called Chat with Traders that I used to love listening to all the time. And I listened to Nate getting interviewed like years ago on this podcast. And he told a story, like he told his whole story of like how he started trading and how he got to where he was. And I remember being, and this is before like I had ever suffered any kind of major setback or drawdown, but I remember he told a story about like how he had traded his account up to $1 million and lost the whole thing and then started over and built it back up again. And I was just so inspired by that story about just like how much like grit and determination and motivation and work that must have taken, and like self-discipline to come back from that I was like, who is this guy? Like, that's amazing. Like that, what an incredible journey. So I went on the internet and Googled him and found the chat room. And I was like, let me join this chat room and see what it's all about. And of course, like mostly it's like there's a lot of, I think they do some swing trading in there, but I see a lot of like low float momentum trades, which is the kind of trade I'm worse at that I don't take, but I just like being in the room and I love the like user interface of the room, like the scanners and all the tools in there. And it's just kind of like this great tool when I'm traveling and trading from a laptop and can't have like my normal setup. I feel like IU really is a great like one stop for everything that you need, because you get like news headlines via the tweets and you get the like scanners that they keep adding to that are amazing. So yeah, I feel like it's especially for when I need to be trading on just like my laptop, it's such a great tool to have.
One of the questions I had, last one about IU, was what type of tools or resources do you find yourself using on a day-to-day basis?
I like trading so much that sometimes I will overtrade, and it just helps to have something to read that's trading related to prevent myself from over trading. Like I can still think about trading and see whatever everyone else is doing and keep my fingers away from the buttons. But I love all of these new features just keep getting added year after year, and they're so amazing and robust. Like there's like the new high of day and low of day scanner. There's like the pre-market and the after hour scanner. I love those. I love that the earnings charts are always up. Like all all of the tools, I would say I use all of them. And it's even gotten to the point where I really will prefer the IU like feeds more than my regular feed. Like I use scans a lot. I think it used to be called equity feed. It's called scans now. And that like I've just noticed more and more that I'm not even opening that anymore, even on my primary trading setup. And I'm like choosing to go with like the tools within the IU user interface just because they're so good and constantly being improved. So I feel like eventually IU is probably going to like squeeze a couple of my other feeds into oblivion, and I might just never use them again.
Yeah, there's always great new tools. Max does an excellent job with thinking about ways that traders can implement technology and listening to feedback and implementing that. It's always really great to see what's new in the room.
Yeah, it's really impressive. I did not know who codes all of that stuff. So Max, you're amazing. Yeah, I just love it. And I just feel like the way all of the scanners and everything is built, it's so intuitive for someone who's actually trading. Yeah. So it's like the one subscription that I think I'll never get rid of.
And so, if it's okay with you, Anna, I would love to be able to go through a lightning round set of questions, just quick questions, quick answers, if that's okay.
Sure.
So, my first question is, can you talk about the importance of a trader understanding their niche? What setup and strategy works for them?
You don't have to be the best at everything. You just have to be really good at one thing. Like one edge is really all you need to make money in the stock market. And it's okay if it's different than the people around you. I would say if you're finding that one particular setup isn't working, but another one is, ditch the one that's not working. Don't try to force it and try to make it work for you. Just keep working on the one that is working and become even better at that. So like the example that I would give is me and momentum day trading. Um, I am I just don't have the stomach for it. I just can't do it. I see Nate and everybody else in IU like trading all of these low float runners intraday, and very rarely do I see a setup that I'm willing to take, and that's okay. It's not my speed, and I know at the end of the day I'm saving myself by just skipping those. So I would say figure out what works best for you. If it's, some people do best trading doing like longer term swing trades. Some people trade better large caps. I know a guy that trades literally tickers that sometimes will have like less than 100K volume a day. And he's like longing and shorting these like 20 of them every day. And looking at any of these charts gives me a heart attack because they look completely untradeable to me, but he crushes it, and it's just different strokes for different folks. I would say once you find something that you're good at or that is working for you, just like don't fight the tide, just go with what is already working and perfect that, make that even better, and then build upon that to find your niche versus trying to force something that's just not there, because you might put in the exact same amount of work to just become passable at a setup that doesn't come naturally to you, whereas you could put the same amount of work into a setup that makes sense to you from the get-go and become amazing at that setup and maybe never need to learn another setup because it works so well. So just, yeah, work smarter, not harder, right?
Great, thank you. Another question I had was, what's the best piece of trading related advice you've ever received or heard?
Protect your capital. Take your stops.
What would you consider to be your greatest strength as a trader?
I'm really good at TA, technical analysis. And I think too, I know when I'm wrong. and I think that's important, right? Don't get married to any of your trades. When you're wrong, just take the loss and move on. Yeah, I guess those are the two I would say.
Is there an area of your trading that you would like to improve on?
Uh, all of them. I just feel like I'm constantly a work in progress and I have a long way to go. But I think I would like to, getting there slowly, get better at looking at the fundamentals, just because I think it helps to have a well-rounded outlook of the market. So that's something that I would like to get better at. And maybe one day I will take another stab at low float momentum trading, or maybe not. I don't know.
And are there any technical indicators that you tend to use on your charts when you're thinking about entering a trade or exiting?
To be honest with you, I don't use a whole lot of technical indicators. I use volume and I watch price action, and I just kind of mark the levels that I think are important based on previous price action. And I really just like to trade level to level based on my major levels. So what I'll do when I'm trading is I'll kind of mark out levels that I deem to be like major key levels, the most important ones. Like if you break that level, break out or break down from that level, you're probably going down to the next major level, right? And then in between, I've got like more minor levels that are still key levels, and I will really just trade level to level from that, in that sense. So I don't use VWAP or moving averages or anything like that. Sometimes I will when I'm doing analysis, like overnight when I'm not trading. I'll put on kind of like different MAs or fibs just to see what other traders are looking at, because I do like when my levels line up with what other traders are looking at, right? Because the more eyeballs you have on the same setup, the more likely it is to follow through. So I will do that sometimes when I'm analyzing like for the next day or the next week, but on an intraday basis, it's just my levels and volume, basically. I do actually, something I like to use too is Fibonacci, but on the time scale, not on the price scale. So Fibonacci time zones. So when I see like a key break in range, based on the price action on those candles. I'll put the fibs on to kind of give me an idea of when direction might change in the future. And that helps me either hold on to a trade longer or get out before like a flip might happen to the other direction of whatever my trade is.
How do you decompress away from the desk to get your mind off of the stresses of trading?
I binge watch Below Deck. I make music. I'm a songwriter, so that is something that I think really helps because you have like left brain, right brain, right? So it's after doing like analytical stuff all day trading, it's nice to do something creative and kind of like give the other side of the brain a rest.
Excellent. And if you could give one piece of advice to all new traders, what would it be?
Take your stops. Yeah, take your stops, protect your capital, and um, wait for the right entry. I feel like I've gone through phases like this too, especially earlier on, where I'll see a trade, but maybe I've missed the entry and I'll take a subpar entry. And because I took a subpar entry, I can't afford to risk the level I should risk. And so then you end up like stopping out early, and then the trade goes without you, and then you tried to chase it again, and then you take another subpar entry. So just like if you catch the entry, great, take it. And if you missed it, just move on to the next. And don't ever enter a trade unless you know your price target and your stop.
For those who are interested in learning more about you or your trading style, how can they do so?
I am on Instagram. It's at Anna Wang and then number 2, but I don't post anything trading related at all. So you can find me on there and message me, but there you'll probably never see me post anything about trading. I did create a Twitter last year because I thought I would maybe post about trading, and that's at High Vibe Trades. Uh, but I also don't post on there that often. But if I ever post anything about trading, that's where it will be.
Okay, great. Well, Anna, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. There's a lot of really helpful bits that I think traders can learn from you. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really nice chatting with you.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell. Thanks for watching.